Don't eat at these 5 UK restaurants until you understand what's really going on behind their doors. Because some of the most familiar places in this country, the ones you walk past without a second thought, are quietly hiding things you'd never expect. And once you see what's happening beneath the surface, you may never look at your usual Friday night spots the same way again. Everyone in the UK has that one restaurant they rely on, that place you go to when you don't want to cook, or when you're stressed, or when you just need something warm, predictable, and comforting. But beneath the glow of neon signs and the smell of sizzling food is a world most diners never get to see. A world where shortcuts happen, standards slip, and not everything is as clean, fresh, or trustworthy as you'd hope. And the strangest part? The problems aren't always in the places you expect. Some of the riskiest restaurants aren't the tiny corner shops you walk past, but the big familiar chains with menus everyone knows. Others are the trendy spots that look incredible on Instagram, but quietly struggle behind the scenes. Some are in tourist hotspots where the food isn't designed for repeat customers. Some are delivery-only kitchens that you've eaten from without realizing you've never actually seen them in real life. Before we get to the 5 types of restaurants you should avoid, we need to understand the system behind them, the part of the UK dining scene that shapes every meal long before it lands on your plate, the hidden machine behind UK restaurants. If you've ever wondered why some restaurants consistently disappoint while others shine effortlessly, the answer almost always lies behind the scenes. The UK restaurant industry isn't just a collection of kitchens, it's a massive machine built on inspections, supply chains, staffing patterns, landlord pressures, delivery apps, seasonal trends, and a surprising number of loopholes that most diners don't know exist. Let's start with hygiene ratings, because they're one of the biggest indicators of restaurant reliability, and they're also one of the most misunderstood. Most people think a 5 means perfection, and a 3 means average, and a 1 means absolutely do not step foot inside. But here's the catch. A restaurant can earn a 3 with issues that have nothing to do with food safety. It might be disorganized paperwork, or staff who haven't completed specific training modules. Meanwhile, a place that looks spotless in the dining area might have earned a 1 because the kitchen hasn't deep cleaned behind the fryers in months. And then there's the loophole nobody talks about. Restaurants only get inspected every 1 to 3 years depending on previous scores, which means a restaurant with a shiny 5 certificate on the door might not have been inspected since 2021. It could have changed hands twice. It could be running under new management. The kitchen could be fine, or it could be 1. Bad weekend away from a disaster. The certificate doesn't update itself, and most customers don't realize the score is only as trustworthy as the date it was given. But hygiene ratings are just one piece of the puzzle. Another huge factor is staffing. The UK restaurant industry has been struggling with staff shortages for years, and when a kitchen doesn't have enough hands, things get chaotic fast. There are restaurants in major cities running with skeleton crews on evenings they used to schedule full teams. When that happens, standards slip, not because staff don't care, but because they're overwhelmed. Clean as you go becomes clean when you can. Temperature checks get rushed. Oil gets changed later than it should. Busy nights turn into survival missions. And then there's the supply chain. This is the part that would shock most diners if they knew how fragile it really is. Many UK restaurants rely on just a handful of suppliers for fish, meat, chips, vegetables, sauces, and even cleaning products. When deliveries run late, or worse, when suppliers start cutting corners due to rising costs, the restaurant feels the impact instantly. Fish gets smaller, meat gets tougher, potatoes arrive bruised. Frozen items spend too long thawing in transit. Restaurants aren't always to blame for declining quality. Sometimes they're victims of a system hanging on by a thread. But perhaps the biggest shift, the one that transformed the entire industry, is the rise of delivery apps. When Deliveroo, Uber Eats, and Just Eat exploded across the UK, restaurants suddenly had to operate as dine-in spaces and miniature logistics hubs. Foods that were never designed to survive a 20-minute bike ride suddenly had to. Kitchens built for 40 covers an hour now had to handle 100, and many restaurants simply weren't prepared. This is the reason your chips arrive cold. It's why your burger looks like it fainted in the bag. It's why your chicken loses its crispness before you even find the remote. The food isn't always bad. The system is just overwhelmed. And overwhelmed systems make mistakes. This is the foundation you need to understand before we get into the 5 types of UK restaurants you should think twice about. Because once you see how the machine works, you begin to recognize why certain places are consistently disappointing and why some patterns repeat themselves across cities, regions, and even chains. The tourist trap that survives on strangers. Our first category of restaurants to avoid is one you've definitely encountered: the tourist trap. These places exist everywhere, from London's Leicester Square to Brighton's seafront to Edinburgh's Royal Mile. They're the restaurants positioned so perfectly, decorated so beautifully, and advertised so aggressively that they almost feel impossible to resist. People line up outside, prices look worryingly high, and inside, everything looks just polished enough to make you think, well, it must be good. But here's the truth. Tourist traps don't expect repeat customers, ever. And that single fact shapes everything about how they operate. A restaurant that relies on locals' lives or dies by reputation. If the fish is bad, if the service is rude, if the chips come out frozen in the middle, customers won't return. But a restaurant that feeds tourists works under different rules. Their customers are here today and gone tomorrow. They don't need to build trust. They just need to convince people to walk through the door once. This is why some of the worst meals in the UK are served within a mile of its biggest attractions. The location does the work, not the food. And when that happens, standards become optional. Frozen fish gets used because it's cheaper. Oil gets stretched because nobody will know. Batter sits too long. Chips come pre-cut and pre-fried from suppliers. And the saddest part is, tourists leave thinking that's what British food tastes like. Some of the UK's most iconic landmarks are surrounded by restaurants that survive purely on foot traffic, not quality. Locals avoid them. Chefs mock them. Reviewers warn about them. But tourists, they keep them alive. And once you start spotting the signs, a laminated menu, a host begging you to come inside, pictures of dishes taken under questionable lighting, the closer the restaurant is to a major attraction, the lower the standards usually fall. The chain that grew too fast. The second type of restaurant you need to be cautious about is one you've almost definitely eaten at. The fast-growing chain that went from small and charming to everywhere you look in what felt like 5 minutes. These chains start beautifully. Their first few locations are run by founders who adore the concept. The food is crafted with passion. The marketing feels genuine. Early customers rave. People queue. Instagram posts go wild. Investors smell opportunity. And then growth. Rapid growth. The kind of growth that looks impressive on a PowerPoint slide, but quietly destroys the very thing that made the restaurant special in the first place. When a restaurant expands too quickly, the heart gets left behind. Recipes get standardized. Ingredients get cheaper. Staff training gets rushed. Managers get stretched thin. And suddenly that warm, interesting, delicious little restaurant becomes a bland, overstressed corporate vehicle run by people who barely have time to breathe, let alone care about the finer details of a menu. Some UK chains that were once adored suffered exactly this fate. They started with flavour. They ended with spreadsheets. The dining room vibe became scripted. The food became predictable, but not in the good way. Predictable in the tired, mass-produced sense. The charm evaporated, and the customers who loved them in the early days slowly trickled away, replaced by people who didn't know what they were missing. Once you learn to spot these chains, you see the decline everywhere. The portion sizes shrink first. Then the ingredients cheapen. Then the flavours flatten. Then the staff begin apologising a lot. The final stage? Locations closing quietly, one by one, while the signs fade in the sun. Growth isn't a bad thing, but uncontrolled growth, the kind that sacrifices quality for speed, almost always leads to restaurant decay. And when a chain collapses, it doesn't happen overnight. It happens one mediocre meal at a time. The local favourite that isn't what it seems. Next is a trickier category, the local favourite. The place everyone in your town swears is amazing. The place people defend online with a level of passion usually reserved for football teams. The restaurant you're expected to love simply because you just haven't ordered the right thing yet. But every UK town has that restaurant. The one with glowing reviews, long lines, and a reputation so strong you start to feel foolish questioning it. Yet when you finally try it, something feels off. The food is fine, sometimes good, but not life-changing the way locals promised. And if you dig deeper, you'll often discover that the reputation was built years ago, back when ownership was different, when the head chef still worked there, when the ingredients were sourced with care rather than convenience. Local favourites are often frozen in time in the public imagination, but restaurants don't stay the same. Staff change, suppliers change, standards slip. And because people love the idea of the place, they keep hyping it long after the food has stopped deserving the hype. This happens more than you'd expect. A beloved local cafe gets sold to new owners and quietly swaps homemade cakes for mass-produced ones. A once iconic curry house house loses its head chef, and suddenly everything tastes painfully average. A popular brunch spot stops caring because it doesn't have to. They know people will keep coming. Reputation can outlive quality by years, sometimes decades. So when everyone in a town insists a restaurant is amazing, look closely. Ask how recent the praise is. Ask who's cooking now. Ask how much has changed since the glory days. You'd be shocked how often nostalgia is doing the heavy lifting. The late-night restaurant that cuts corners. Now let's talk about the one everyone has experienced but few admit. The late-night restaurant. The 11 p.m. kebab shop. The midnight burger place. The spot you end up in after drinks, fueled by questionable decisions and an empty stomach. Late-night restaurants are some of the riskiest places to eat. Not because they're dangerous, but because they're exhausted. Their kitchens have been running for hours. Their fryers are tired. Their staff are tired. Their ingredients are tired. And as the night goes on, standards naturally slip. It's not even intentional. It's physics. Food safety doesn't care what time it is. Some late-night places are brilliant, run by owners who genuinely care about quality from open to close. But many others enter survival mode after 9 p.m. They stretch ingredients. They reuse oil that's begging for retirement. They leave meat sitting just a little too long. They fry everything at hotter temperatures because it speeds up service. And they rely on the fact that most customers at that hour aren't in a position to notice the finer details. And here's something most people don't know. The majority of food poisoning cases linked to takeaways happen late at night. Not because the food is inherently bad, but because late-night kitchens are the perfect storm lower staffing, higher demand, and tired equipment. If you've ever wondered why a kebab tastes amazing at 1 a.m. but makes absolutely no sense the next day, this is why. At night, you eat with emotion. In the morning, you remember the science. The delivery ghost kitchen hiding behind a logo. Then we have one of the most fascinating and risky categories in the modern UK restaurant scene. The ghost kitchen. Delivery-only restaurants operating in anonymous industrial units, basements, shared kitchens, and converted storage spaces. You've almost definitely eaten from one without realizing it. Ghost kitchens exploded during the pandemic, offering a way for new brands to exist without physical locations. Some are fantastic, truly innovative, well-run, clean, and ambitious, but others are mysterious for a reason. These kitchens don't rely on walk-in customers. You never see the inside. You have no idea who's cooking, how many staff are working, how clean the space is, or whether the food is pre-prepared. Delivery apps are filled with duplicate brands run by the same ghost kitchen, using different logos to make you think there are more options. One kitchen might operate 4 or 5 fake restaurants, each with a different name, all cooking the same food. Some ghost kitchens are run out of old warehouses with equipment that looks like it predates Wi-Fi. Others operate with 1 fryer, 2 microwaves, and a level of improvisation that would terrify you if you saw it in person. And because they don't rely on reputation in a physical community, they can disappear overnight, rename themselves, and relaunch as something new whenever things go wrong. And then there's delivery quality. Ghost kitchens depend entirely on food surviving the journey, which means they sometimes build menus designed for endurance rather than flavor. The result, meals that arrive half collapsed, steaming in a way no food should ever steam, tasting like a rough draft of an idea. Ghost kitchens aren't inherently bad, but the bad ones blend in perfectly with the good ones. And unless you know what to look for, you're eating blind. The restaurant that looks clean until it doesn't. There's one more category of restaurant you need to be wary of, and it might be the sneakiest of them all. The restaurant that looks clean, polished, modern, and trustworthy until you realize presentation is the only thing it's good at. The kind of place with perfect lighting, immaculate decor, and staff uniforms crisply ironed within an inch of their lives. But behind the scenes, things are unraveling like a badly rolled wrap. These are the restaurants that rely heavily on appearances. They know customers judge with their eyes first. They know that if the decor is beautiful and the branding is tasteful, most people won't ask questions. And that confidence allows them to get away with problems that aren't visible from the dining room. Some of the biggest UK restaurant scandals in recent years involve places that looked spotless from the outside. Smart high street spots with glossy menus and open kitchens carefully designed to show you just enough. The sizzling grill, the flames leaping up theatrically, but not the corners where the real mess hides. Not the prep stations where raw meats and vegetables meet in ways they shouldn't. Not the storage rooms where fridges run warm on busy days. Not the oil drums tucked behind doors no customer ever walks through. And what's fascinating is that these restaurants often use their image as a protective shield. Customers assume that clean decor equals clean practices. They assume that polished branding equals professionalism. They assume a restaurant that clearly spent thousands on interior design must have everything else under control. But in reality, some of the worst hygiene issues happen in the restaurants that are fighting the hardest to look perfect. Because when you spend more time on the front of house aesthetic than on what happens in the kitchen, you create the exact conditions that allow shortcuts, oversights, and sloppy habits to creep in. Some owners even prioritize cosmetic upgrades over essential repairs. New chairs instead of a new fridge, a neon sign instead of proper extractor maintenance, a trendy plant wall instead of new chopping boards. And it works until the problems snowball. Customers never see the moment a chef realizes a fridge isn't holding temperature. They never see the sink with water that won't drain. They never see the delivery of ingredients that arrived half thawing. They never see staff rushing through cleaning because the dinner rush hit harder than expected. They never see the pressure behind the Instagram-ready facade. And that's what makes this category so unsettling. It's not the obviously risky places you need to fear. It's the ones that have perfected the illusion. How restaurants fall apart. Once you understand these 5 categories, something becomes clear. Most failing restaurants don't collapse because of one catastrophic mistake. They collapse because of tiny cracks that form slowly, quietly, consistently until the whole experience becomes unrecognizable. The decline usually starts with staffing. When a restaurant loses its most experienced chefs or managers, the structure weakens instantly. Kitchens are ecosystems. Remove one pillar and everything shifts. A new chef doesn't season the same way. New fryer doesn't time dishes the same. A new manager doesn't enforce cleaning schedules as strictly. Suddenly, the consistency that built the restaurant's reputation disappears. Then the financial pressure sets in. Rent climbs, energy bills climb, ingredient prices climb, and with every cost increase, restaurants are forced to make choices. Cheaper cuts of meat, more frozen products, smaller portions, less frequent oil changes, fewer staff during busy hours, and these tiny downgrades add up quickly. A customer might forgive one off day, but not 3, and bad word spreads faster than good. Technology adds pressure too. Delivery apps have changed the UK restaurant landscape beyond recognition. Kitchens built for 40 diners now handle 40 diners, 60 delivery orders, and a dozen late-night stragglers who appear 10 minutes before closing. Staff must balance dine-in orders with delivery tickets that never stop printing. Hot dishes cool during courier delays. Customers complain about things the restaurant can't control. Bad reviews pile up based on problems that happened on a bicycle, not in the kitchen. And then there's burnout, the invisible enemy of restaurant quality. Hospitality is brutal. Physically demanding, emotionally draining, relentless. When a team is tired, exhausted, overwhelmed, or underpaid, their attention to detail fades. Not because they don't care, but because fatigue wins. A tired cook is more likely to overcook a dish. A tired dishwasher is more likely to miss something. A tired manager is more likely to let little problems slide. Restaurants rarely announce when things start slipping. Decline is quiet. You see it first in the details. A sauce that tastes different. A dish that arrives lukewarm. A waiter who looks like they sprinted straight from a meltdown. A menu that shrinks mysteriously. An atmosphere that feels flatter than you remember. And by the time customers start to notice, the decline is already well underway. The emotional cost of a bad meal. Most people underestimate how personal eating out is. You're not just paying for food, you're trusting a stranger with your evening, your appetite, your comfort. A good restaurant makes you feel taken care of. But a bad restaurant? It feels like a betrayal. It feels like money wasted, expectations shattered, time lost. The UK has a long, emotional relationship with its food culture. Sunday roasts, takeaway nights, family dinners, date nights, breakfast in busy cafes. These moments carry memories. And when a restaurant ruins that, it feels almost insulting. This is why people get so passionate about the topic. It's why a bad meal can put someone in a foul mood for hours. It's why reviewers write 3-paragraph essays about chips that tasted soulless. It's why restaurant scandals go viral on social media. Food isn't just fuel here. It's identity, community, ritual. And when a restaurant loses sight of that, it loses everything. So before you eat at those 5 types of UK restaurants, the tourist trap that survives on strangers, the chain that grew too fast, the local favourite that hasn't deserved the praise in years, the late-night shop held together by hope and adrenaline, and the ghost kitchen hiding behind logos and mystery, take a moment to look beneath the surface. Not every restaurant in these categories is bad, not every place is dangerous, but the patterns are real, the risks are real, and the more you understand how the system works, the easier it becomes to protect yourself from disappointing meals. Great restaurants still exist across the UK, incredible ones, run by people who care deeply about quality, tradition, and hospitality. They just don't always shout the loudest, and they're not always where you expect. If anything, knowing what not to trust makes the good ones even more special. If you learned something new today, stick around, because we're just getting started. This channel dives deep into the hidden world of UK restaurants, exposing the truths most diners never hear. Hit subscribe, stay curious, and join us for the next episode, because the next meal you order may have a story you won't believe.